I saw this last week. One of the producers brought it in, and I double-taked. And I had to go get online just to make sure that I was really reading. I mean, I thought it was one of these things where people make a fake site and then make it look like CNN or Fox or Associated Press. I've seen that before, where people actually make a fake URL, but you can immediately read it until it's fake. And I read this, and I thought, this really reads like a CNN report, but this can't be true. So I searched it. Little did I know, this news had been out for several weeks. Several weeks. It first broke in early August. Bloomberg put his press release out. And it was AP, Fox, CNN, and all reporting it like it's totally reasonable. And see, that's another story. Not just that they barred the first responders from the 10th anniversary, but that it's not a bigger issue. I mean, look at this. And it goes on to say that they are barred from it because Mayor Bloomberg, and also now it turns out the White House is behind this. No God is to be mentioned. 30,000 plus people just in the area, 100,000 around it. No porta potties. It's really bizarre. They don't want people there. They don't want the first responders there because, look at these headlines. Congressional ordered screening of 9/11 responders turns up no terrorist. That's right. They are being screened as terrorists, the first responders. 911 responders to be warned they will be screened by FBI's terrorism watch list. Huffington Post. I mean, I'm reading New York Post, Huffington Post. Here's another one here. The Health Care Act compensation won't cover 9/11 survivors with cancer. They know there's thousands of surviving men and women, firefighters, police, medics, doctors, National Guard, heroes. When everybody was running out, the old cliche, they ran in. And for 9 years, they blocked coverage, even though all the major universities out there did the scans of their lungs, full of asbestos, the deaths, all the police dogs died in a couple of years, even people that got their feet chopped off by falling debris, in the recovery effort and the demolition effort, they wouldn't get treatment. So we fought. I flew to New York, my own expense, rented buildings, gave 100% to first responders, the groups that were pushing to get the compensation. When they finally got the compensation, they said, you got to go through a terror database, and now we're not going to cover most stuff. So that's why they don't want them there. They said they're going to have a fire chief, police chief, and the military, just brass there. They're not allowed in the pit. They're not allowed in the main event. And why is that? Well, I know why. But here to give us their view on it is Joey-Garofalo, New York City correctional officer, and worked at Ground Zero in the first few weeks of 9/11. He's the founder and director of 911 WTC First Responders Foundation, RememberBuilding7.org, and Ted Walter started doing research for many years and have been involved ever since. And he's the director of NYC CAN and Remember Building 7 campaign. They've run those ads that have gotten national attention and that our listeners have supported, and I want to thank you, the listeners, for doing that. Before we get into this year's 10th anniversary and what's happening, and how Obama put out talking points saying use it to take liberties, expand the war on terror, but no responders, what is your view, and why do you think they're barring the first responders from the event? Joey, Ted, whoever wants to go first.
Hey, yeah, this is Ted here. Joey, you want to take that?
Hey, Joey, are you there? Joey Garofalo? I think we lost his phone line. While we're getting Joey back on the line, Ted, you're a New Yorker. You've been covering this. Why do you think this happened?
Well, yeah, the first responders bring a sad story to 9/11, and the country, the powers that be want to forget. They want people to be happy. They don't want people to look at the real effects of 9/11. The fact that we're in 2, 3, uncountable numbers of wars. The fact that we've got thousands of first responders dying. That's the story that first responders bring to 9/11. And that's why the powers that be don't want them there. So, and yeah, first responders are angry, especially with the cancer issue. Joey has been an outspoken voice against this, and it's just really unconscionable that cancer is not being covered by Zadroga. It's really unconscionable.
Now, Joey, now that you're there with us, specifically expanding on that, You're saying you concur with my analysis that they know that they were poisoned, the EPA was ordered to lie about the deadly dust, they've been blocked health care, and the government doesn't want them there because they're scared of them. All right, I think we're having some kind of technical difficulties or something with folks, so we'll just interview Ted. Ted, can you give us your view on these folks?
Yeah, well, I've spent a lot of time with them the last few years, and look, it's not a happy bunch of people. They're suffering, they're dying. We thought last year was a little bit of a breakthrough. There was going to be some funding for them. But yeah, as we found out, because cancer is not being covered, there's a huge percentage of the first responders. And it's not only the first responders. Last year, a dear friend of NYC Can, Jeanette McKinley, passed away. She had a brain tumor. And she was right across the street from the World Trade Center when it collapsed, and a huge mountain of dust broke through her windows. She inhaled it, and she's not with us anymore. And so they know what that dust did. They know what's in that dust. They know what that dust does to people. And when you bring first responders into the story, it just brings us closer to the truth about what happened on 9/11.
Now, Ted, while we're getting Joey back on the line, we had some issues with that line. He was up for a second. It sounded like he was agreeing, or perhaps that was you. But when you talk to these first responders, these heroes, why do they think they're barred from the ceremony? And is it hurtful? I know they're in the CNN articles and others saying they're outraged and they don't know why this is happening. But how could Mayor Bloomberg just calmly say, "Yeah, you're not welcome"?
Again, because they bring a story. They bring a story of pain, and they're still angry. You know. The family members, a lot of family members are very angry, are still looking for the truth. But a lot of family members are going to be at the ceremony, and unfortunately are willing to sort of support the official narrative that's been going on, because it's a really painful, unspeakably painful topic for them as well. But the first responders are much less willing. And they've got so much to be angry about because they're still not getting the support that they need 10 years later. And so, yeah, if they were there, they would be outspoken. They wouldn't be contributing to the dynamic that New York City, Mike Bloomberg, the president, et cetera, are trying to create. They just don't fit into that narrative that we're supposed to be all swallowing on the 10th anniversary. Did you see 2 days ago when the White House talking points that were supposed to be secret went out to state government, federal government, and foreign governments about the narrative of Al-Qaeda's a threat, we've got to have more wars, got to take your rights, we're going to keep you safe? I mean, they want to use the heroes and the images of the people on the pile, but they don't want people to see them in their wheelchairs and coughing up blood like I have. Exactly. It's a very sad story. But you know who's telling the real story? You look across the pond in Europe. There are a number of documentaries coming out this weekend. One is coming out on M6. That's basically the second biggest channel in France, and it's telling the story of the first responders and their suffering, and it's telling the story of the family members and their suffering as well, and the fact that they haven't had a real investigation into the murder of their loved ones. And so, like, media in other parts of the world are awake, and they're waking up, and they're telling the stories that need to be told, the real stories. And that's because people in Europe are waking up. This weekend, we are going to have a breakthrough. We have major documentaries in France, Germany, and Italy coming out about the Remember Building 7 campaign. They're going to be seen by at least 10 million Europeans. And Europeans, they're not prone to deceiving themselves as quickly as much of the people in our country because they've been through a lot of stuff over the last 100 years or so. So when they see Building 7 collapse, they're going to know that's a controlled demolition. You don't have to talk to a scientist to figure that out. And Europeans are going to see it. They're going to say, what the hell? Now, talking to the first responders, I know I've been to many memorials, and I remember 6, 7, 8 years ago out there with 9/11s and inside job shirts outside the memorial, and some of the police, some of the firemen cussing at us. But the last few times I went, I mean, it was the commander saying, "Appreciate you, Alex, we're with you." Well, hey, you want to be on camera? No, but just know we're with you. And firefighters everywhere I went buying me dinner and police shaking my hand. So it seems to be a total flip. And I've interviewed some of the heads of some of the biggest 9/11 victims groups, and they've said, and this is 4 or 5 years ago, we've got one of the interviews in Terror Storm,
with the head of the biggest 9/11 group, and he said the majority, more than 50% of the families, believe it's an inside job. And of course, that was 5 years ago. When you talk to the first responders, I mean, are they barred just because they're mad about the cancer and the dust and not being given health care, or is it also the fact that a lot of them know the truth?
A lot of them know the truth. So many of them know the truth. And they were all told very shortly after 9/11 not to speak about it or they lose their jobs and they lose their pensions. I've spoken to probably about 24 individual first responders myself who've all told me the same thing. And, we try to get them to come out. We got guys that's, we're like 2 blocks away from the Trade Center when it was, basically in the process of collapsing. They watched pieces of the building, shoot off, very, very clear explosions. They want to talk about it, but they're scared because they're going to lose their pension.
Well, it's on tape, the explosions before 7 fell, and you got cops saying, get back, they're bringing 7 down. That's on CNN. And I've interviewed 2 of the police officers, and then, of course, after they came on the air later, they're like, it's gotten too many threats, I'm not coming back on. But they've gone public. And Luke, of course, knows them all, but are not from memory. I can't mention, I don't remember their names, but I've had a lot of them on. And they're people that were there and heard the countdown for Building 7. And then the debunkers spin it and say, you're saying the police and firemen were involved. No, they were there and were told by FEMA, get back, it's coming down. That's on CNN. Then they were threatened, don't tell anybody what you saw. And now they're not allowed at the memorial service. Why do you think the system's so bold?
Why the system is so bold? I mean, it's just the media that we're up against is just, it's a huge megaphone, and we're fighting against it. We have, we've got so many people, so much testimony, and yet, it's a challenge to break through, which is why what we're doing now with the Remember Building 7 campaign and the 10th anniversary is we're getting the thousands, tens of thousands of people that are out there that know the truth to come together on the 10th anniversary. Because you know what? If we can raise $1 million, which is what we're trying to do, you can be sure basically what $1 million will allow us to do is show Building 7 to half of the people in the New York metropolitan area. That's about 10 million people who will see Building 7 collapse. And when 1 in 2 people see Building 7 collapse, that will break through. There will be serious discussion about Building 7. People don't have preconceived notions about Building 7 because they don't know about it. When they see it on TV, they're going to wake up, and the media won't be able to stop this discussion from happening.
Well, for whatever reason, we lost Joey, but we're definitely going to get him back up on another day, and I want to get Mr. Feel on and a lot of other organizations. Again, I don't want to just glaze over this. The magnitude, the desperateness that it shows. The system loved to get the cops in their dress blues and the fire people and all the folks out there and point at them and use them. But the fact is, most of them have woken up and know the truth now, so they're barred. They're barred from an event. I was reading numbers of 30,000 are going to be let in, but none of the first responders. And Bloomberg had a quote about, they are not the focus. They are the heroes of 9/11. I mean, any way you look at it, inside job or not, these are the heroes, and the government says they're barred. I mean, this is Twilight Zone.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you know what? We're going to break through it on this anniversary. Our numbers are just too much now across the world. We need, what we're looking for at rememberbuilding7.org is for 20,000 people to come together, give an average donation of just $50 each for the anniversary. And with that, we're going to have $1 million. We're going to put ads. Every other New Yorker is going to see footage of Building 7 collapse.
By the way, you've already aired a lot of ads.
We've been doing this for the past year. A year ago, NYC Can and Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth decided to come together to raise money to put ads on TV. We've been doing it for the last year. We were on Geraldo. We were on Judge Knapp's show.
You got a lot of attention, and just to add, I'm really proud that you kicked it off on this show and that our listeners donated the original seed money to prime the pump and start it. Very exciting. We'll be right back with more on 10 years. What killed America? We'll be right back.